I will testify in front of the committee, and I think whatever decision the committee will take, we all should be acceptable to that. I will also accept it, you should also accept. You can say it has been alleged, but this proving me guilty like this, I do not think that is correct. Our Indian constitution is based on the fact that innocent until proven guilty. By media trial proving me guilty is actually wrong on everybody's part. The experts of government, they will decide. I am very sure that whatever is the truth, whatever it is, it will come in front of the committee. That will be public, that will be open to scrutiny.
सही बात है कि उनको जो विकलांगता सर्टिफिकेट है उनको अगस्त 2022 में इशू किया गया था यहाँ पे.
Puja Khedkar, you must have heard this name by now. Against this trainee IAS from Maharashtra, UPSC, the body responsible for conducting the entrance exams for entry into the country's civil services, has issued her a notice, asking her why shouldn't her selection be cancelled. Charges against her include fraudulently availing attempts beyond the permissible limit and forgery under the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and IT Act. Allegedly, Ms. Khedkar cleared the exam in 2022, securing 841st rank by gaming the system, lying about visual and mental disabilities and faking her identity, including changing the names of her parents to clear the civil services entrance exam. Now, UPSC is one of country's most prestigious exams. Gaming the system to this extent should not have been possible in the first place. And Ms. Khedkar's case has raised some serious questions. Some say this has brought the very sanctity of the selection process under question. And the other important question this raises is how widespread the rot is. To help us understand that, I'm joined by someone who has been a bureaucrat himself. Ex-IRS, Mr. Ravi Kapoor. Mr. Kapoor currently mentors UPSC aspirants. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Kapoor.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. It's a pleasure.
Mr. Kapoor, this is preposterous. Gaming the system to this extent should not have been possible in the first place. Now, if all the allegations and charges leveled against Ms. Khedkar are found to be true, then who would trust institutions conducting these exams?
Exactly, Mr. Singh, and that is the larger issue here. I mean, there are three things involved here which we must be careful of. And while we do that, we also must be cognizant of the fact that the inquiries are still going on. We don't know all the facts, but what is available on the forefront prima facie is, number one, there is the issue of misconduct. The issue of misconduct is separate and distinct from the issue of the fake certificate. That is a separate issue. And when I say separate and distinct, I mean legally separate and distinct also, which is also to say that there will be two separate actions that should be initiated. There will be one action for the misconduct because Rule 3 of the Civil Services Conduct Rules, for the benefit of the audience, I should mention that Civil Service Conduct Rules are these rules which basically dictate all the rules and regulations for civil servants, including their leaves, etc., and all the disciplinary foundations that they have to comply with. These rules in Section 3 have a interesting and a very widely used word called unbecoming, behavior unbecoming of an officer. Now, what appears to be visible on social media and some of the things, but although I would not like to pass judgment here and I'll be careful about that, is there seems to be some misconduct and some behavior unbecoming of an officer that appears to be apparent. So that will lead to some sort of an action, and therefore, depending on the gravity of her misconduct, if at all there is any misconduct, there will be some punishments if the cadre controlling authority deems fit. Important to also understand and remember that the UPSC is not the cadre controlling authority. Cadre controlling authority for the IAS is the DOPT, Department of Personnel and Training. The UPSC is the recruitment body, and so therefore, the other issue, which has to do primarily with UPSC, is this issue of fake certificates and how, if at all, the system has been gamed like you have put it. If it has been gamed, in fact, then it, of course, is a very serious and a larger issue. Then we must also fix responsibility and we must check how the leakage happened. Whoever is responsible must be held accountable, and the chain must be established all the way down to the people who have issued the certificates, if at all they are fake, and who was supposed to cross-check them and why it was not checked in the first place and why it took so long. That's another issue that has to come up. So there are all these 2-3 things which are involved, and they seem to have all kicked up a huge storm, like you rightly said. Apart from the legal and the technical things which I mentioned, like you have also said, the issue being the erosion of trust is what bothers me personally. Many of my students also.
Just in the last 1.5 months, NEET paper leak issue, it's sub judice. then UGC NET had to be cancelled, and now this. And these are some of country's biggest, most prestigious exams.
These are elite exams, yes. These are elite exams, and the common theme in all of them is that they are conducted by the government or some semi-government autonomous body. They are not
Yes.
privatized. Now, we may hear
Yes.
a stream of thought suggesting that we should privatize perhaps to stop these leakages. Now, that's a separate debate. But you are right about the
Right.
fact that there have been leakages. That being said, Mr. Singh, there is no question about the fact that exams, all rules or mechanisms can be hacked. And I've said this before. The idea is what we must see, what we must pass judgment on, if at all we pass judgment, is to see how quickly the system responds. And does it repair itself? Does it re-establish trust? Does it fix the loopholes? Does it bring in systemic reforms so that something like this never happens? More interestingly, does it look
Mr.
back at...
Kapoor, neither you nor I are going to pass judgment, but what we will definitely talk about is what's prima facie seeming to be true. One, of course, as you put it, is the case of misconduct, and the other is based on the notice sent to Ms. Khedkar by UPSC, which, of course, talks about the fact that she used more attempts than she was entitled to based on some documents that have allegedly been forged.
Yes, that's a serious issue. And in fact, that is another dimension which has recently popped up, which was not there just a few days ago. And it just seems to get murkier and murkier and dirtier and dirtier. And the more one looks into it, the more things keep coming up, and something is seriously wrong. I mean, that much is apparent on the face of it. Whatever it is
Then
has
there
to
is
be
the
dealt
issue
with
of
and has to be...
then there is the issue of disproportionate assets. I mean, apparently she owns property worth 17 crores.
Yes, and that absolutely makes absolutely no sense, because you see, the larger issue again here is, if our country has made a place for reservation to make sure that people in economically weaker sections have a level playing field, the principle of equity is followed, not just equality, equity. So
Right.
therefore, you need to make sure that there is trust in the system. Without the trust, nothing works. It's completely pointless to have reservation
Are you
and to
saying
have all of
are you
these...
saying this also raises some questions over the reservation as such?
Yes, if the reservation can be gamed, then don't you think that it is correct to say that people will stop believing it? And the idea is, if you can game the system, then you might as well game it. Also, it's important to mention here, the people who are able to game it are by default the people who are rich and powerful.
Right.
This is exactly opposite of the intention of the policy. The intention of the policy was to help people who don't have those resources, so that they can come and represent more in the government, so that they have a voice, so that they have a level playing field, so that they have social mobility. You call that system collapses, then what's the point of the whole thing? That is the larger concern.
Right. Now, UPSC has sent her a notice, has asked her to respond, and the next step against her will be taken after she has responded to that notice. Could you explain to us how will this process work, how much time this is going to take?
Notice that the UPSC has issued has mentioned the issue of these extra attempts, which is what will ultimately lead to an inquiry, which will try to determine whether or not she was eligible. The eligibility itself of her appearing in the exam is under question. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this notice does not address the issue of her misconduct or alleged misconduct. That will be initiated by the DOPT, if at all. So this can lead to, if it is proven. So like you mentioned about the procedure is, there is something called the principle of natural justice that is always followed, always must be followed. The notice is issued. A notice essentially means that her allegations and whatever charges against her have been contemplated, not confirmed, contemplated, are communicated to her. She will now respond to those, and she will try to reason as to why those actions and should not be taken, why disciplinary action should not be further initiated. Once this happens, there will be an inquiry. This is not the inquiry yet. This is the beginning of an inquiry. The inquiry will go into evidence. The inquiry will go into all the aspects that it needs to go into. And then there will be another round of scrutiny, another round of to and fro, another round of questioning, after which it will get finalized and certain amount of so a verdict will be announced by the UPSC. And the UPSC has enough powers to either nullify or qualify her attempt. So that is what that notice will lead to. What will happen as far as her misconduct is concerned now has become a little bit secondary because of this new thing. You see, if the eligibility itself is under question and she was never entitled to give the exam at all, then the issue of misconduct becomes secondary. So that will now take the center stage, so to speak.
So far, would you say that the action, you were talking about it earlier, that what matters in such situations is how the concerned authorities respond to the crisis? So far, do you think what has happened, the steps which have been taken by UPSC, are you satisfied with that?
No, I'll be honest. No, this is just the bare minimum that has happened. This should have been
Right.
happened. This is just how it always happens. We are getting to see this because it has captured our attention, and because it is now become a matter of public discourse. This is the way it normally always happens. What I would love to see is what your UPSC does to make sure this never happens. Number one. Number two, what the UPSC does to make sure has it happened before. Will they take that suo moto action to investigate what happened before? Are there other leakages? Are there people out there who have been able to game the system error still in the system? If they do that, then that is something that will, to me, mean that yes, they mean business.
All right. And also, since of course you have also served as a civil servant, did you come across any such cases back in your days?
There are many. So, if you are referring to cases which question the eligibility of the person in the services itself, no, not seen it.
Right.
And I also did not hear about this. In fact, I'll be honest, Mr. Singh, I have interacted with many officers, dozens, in fact, hundreds. You speak with them and you get a sense of the pedigree, you get a sense of their intelligence, you get a sense of their depth. I have never met
I
somebody
agree.
who I felt like, never met somebody who subjectively I felt like, what is this person doing here? How did he even get selected? I haven't had that feeling. And you'll see
Mhm.
this sentiment echoed in the civil services. This is a rarity, as far as I can tell. Even if the
Right.
UPSC delves deep and they go into all and they fine comb the whole thing, I don't think you'll find a lot of miscreants. This is a rarity. It should not have happened, but I don't think it calls for us to question the whole thing in itself. I don't think that is the case. It still remains a very solid institution. But yes, this is an opportunity for the UPSC to become stronger still.
All right. So, in case you had to suggest UPSC, some things that they should do, some steps that they should take, what will those steps be?
I would say use artificial intelligence to make sure that the documents cannot be forged at all. And some tools in AI are now available to make sure that that happens. Now, of course, that comes with a complication of digital illiteracy in some cases, where it's an open exam and the UPSC has to be cognizant of it. The other thing I would say is that the way the confirmation system, the way the system for checking the certificate goes, there's usually a lag. You see, a candidate will first clear the prelims and then the mains, and then they appear for the interview. And at that stage, around the time, but before the interview, they will submit their documents, which are later subject to scrutiny. I think that lag has to be minimized. Can't take 1 or 2 years. You see, it needs to get wrapped up before they get the selection letter. It needs to be checked thoroughly whether everything is in order or not. And if yes, then they need to issue the notice right there and then. So that time has to be reduced. AI has to
Sure.
be implemented, I believe, in this opinion. Apart from this, as far as the exam is concerned and the pattern and the eligibility, etc., is concerned, I think more digitization is the only thing that they can do as much as the examination is concerned. Because you see, ultimately, it boils down to an examination which cannot be hacked. The examination itself remains intact. Nobody has questioned the leakage of any paper in UPSC or any as such setting which can be used to game that exam. There is eligibility through certificates which the UPSC can only scrutinize. They can neither produce nor destroy the certificates. They just receive them. What they can do is check them faster, better. That's all.
You mentor a lot of aspirants. What are they saying to you?
They worry about this. They worry. Their
Yeah.
concern is, and many
Because,
of them come from
no, please go ahead.
they come from many of them come from weak financial backgrounds, I'll be frank, and they come from a place where they are looking for merit to take them to places in life. They want to climb the top of the society. They want to do big things. They are inspired by IAS, IPS officers that they see on social media. They want to become that. They want to participate in nation building. They want to go to the United Nations, represent India, and be that spokesperson. And very proud they are about it. When things like this happen, it erodes their trust, and they feel as if that image of India has gotten confirmed. That image, which is primarily negative, which suggests that if you have contacts and if you have influence, you can get away with things. You're not supposed to be able to get away with things like this. Therein lies the problem. So their morale is a little bit shaken, but it is still very much there. They know that it is one of the best, and that is apparent because you see, if this case has given us one counter example, There are hundreds of good examples of people walking out there, and you can just tell just by their demeanor, by their behavior, by the way they speak, and what they do is that these are people of some caliber. They're not people who just game the system entirely and come into it. So for every one person, there are thousands of civil servants out there who are making the country proud. That also they are aware of. My students, all UPSC aspirants in the country. But the system should not be hackable. That we cannot have. That I will insist on.
That's good to hear, because UPSC students, and you would know this better than I do, end up spending a lot of their time, a lot of their years after college in preparing for the exam. And after that, once you find out that the exam has been gamed by, even if it's just a few cases, some oddballs, then definitely it does impact your morale. So I completely understand the sentiment. But thank you, Mr. Kapoor. Thank you so much for explaining the case to us and walking us through it. Thank you so much for taking out the time.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I hope this clarifies things. I hope it brings perspectives, and I hope that we can re-establish some trust in this institution, which I have a lot of respect for. Thank you very much.
I hope so too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.